Ah, there she is. Okay. Hi, Corinna. You're muted. You got to unmute.
Okay.
There we go. Hi. So, we should get started pretty quickly because Corinna has to leave at 6:50. I didn't know you were talking to another club tonight, but I will say I just told everyone that you were last a speaker at our club at the last non-virtual meeting that we had.
Oh,
because it was just so maybe this is a good sign, and we're eventually going to be back to live sessions because the turnout and it's counterintuitive, but the turnout for these Zoom sessions has not been so great. So everybody, if you're not familiar with Corinna, she just finished a very closely fought battle for one of the state Senate seats in Palm Beach. What was it? District 25. Ran for Congress in South Dakota, where she hails from. Is an expert on an area and has a doctorate in an area that we are of great concern today. As I said in the email inviting everybody, they have the guns, we don't, and they've been the biggest danger to this country in terms of terrorism since the Oklahoma City bombing, and we need to know more about them and the risk they present and what we can do about it. So without further ado, if you would launch into it. Do you have slides, you said?
I do.
Okay. David, can you make her the co-host or whatever so that she can share the screen?
Okay.
And welcome, Tom.
There you go. I'm going to mute everybody. Let me see if I can get this done. Mute all. People can unmute themselves. Corinna will unmute. I'm going to keep Michael muted. Okay, we're good. Mute me. Michael doesn't know he's been muted. Oh, apparently
I'm not anymore.
Apparently he figured it out.
But you have to tell Corinna how to share the screen.
I'm muted. Are you good with that?
Yeah, I don't see the tab where I need to upload the slides, but
Generally, if you open it up in PowerPoint or whatever on your computer, then when you go and share screen, that should be one of the options.
okay. Now I opened that up and I just need to find the slides, right?
Yeah, we do.
I'm gonna mute Michael again.
Yeah, so I see
Now
file.
it's 6 o'clock.
I don't see where I can select the slides.
Have you opened them up?
Well, no, because it doesn't give me the option to go to my desktop on my computer.
Minimize Zoom for a minute and just open up the PowerPoint presentation. Then when you bring back Zoom, you should be able to share screen and it will be there. Or if you quickly email it to me, I can,
Okay, what's your email?
DG,
DUG?
David Jean, KULICK,
Uh-huh.
hotmail.com.
Okay, so I'm going to go to the email that I sent and I'll forward it to you real quick. Sorry about that.
Okay, we'll figure out how to do this.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I can tell you how to do it.
okay. Oh,
You go to your PowerPoint, go back to the PowerPoint. On the top right hand is a line which you minimize the PowerPoint. And then you go to open Zoom, share screen, and you should be able to find the PowerPoint in that presentation. Then you put the cursor on the PowerPoint and it should maximize it.
Yeah, that first step that you mentioned is not coming up.
Go to your PowerPoint. Do you have your PowerPoint?
I'll have to minimize what I'm doing now.
Okay, you minimize the PowerPoint. And then you exit and go to Zoom.
Okay, hold on. Because I went ahead and emailed it like an hour ago with my bio, so I wasn't expecting to have to pull it up.
Michael, so you have it?
Yes, I'm sending it right now.
Okay, I'm trying to find it.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize that's,
That's okay.
yeah, I just sent it to David, so he should be able
Okay.
to.
All right.
I haven't gotten it. You send it to the Hotmail account, right?
Yeah, I just sent it the second. Yeah, give it
Okay.
a second.
I expect instant response.
Does sound like it just got through.
Hello, Mark.
None of mine. Not there, it's not in junk.
How you doing?
Good, how are you? Good to see you.
Thank you. Me too.
We got to get you back.
I'll be back.
Didn't go there. It's not there. Apparently it went to join the virtual pizza.
I just sent it to you. You know what? Maybe I can try to do it,
Yeah,
but I
let me
sent it to you at 6:10.
Okay, but I don't have it. So wait a minute, I'm gonna make you co-host. Co-host anyway. Okay, you're now.
All right, so I am opening up the presentation now.
I'm not over.
Okay, and now I am going back to Zoom and I'm going to share screen.
Yay.
Share screen, and there it is. So I share.
3, 2, 1. That's an email.
You got it?
Close, but that's an email you're sharing.
It's an attachment to the email.
There we go.
Well, you have to open it up. There you go. Somebody did it.
I didn't.
Okay, let's go.
All right, let's go. Well, again, I'm not over reliant on these slides because I talk on this topic all the time, but I just wanted you all to be able to see them because I am very transparent and I'm willing to share them. You know, if folks want more information, I probably update these about once a month. But bottom line is I was proud and privileged to serve in the military, and my last assignment was working alongside the Joint Terrorism Task Force in the CIA in Iraq. And as a woman, it was challenging to be out and about amongst a lot of leaders, foreign leaders, because they weren't accustomed to a woman being in their presence or really seeing the effect that we had there on the ground. But so that picture you see on the left is where we had just literally rolled into a town that got blown up, and we were in tanks, and we got out. We wanted the people to know that they're safe and it's okay to come out. And all of a sudden, all these little kids came out and they were looking for candy. food. So there I am, I'm kneeling down beside this little Iraqi girl and trying to teach her how to take off the wrapping of a Tootsie Pop
Isn't it full
and,
screen now?
and enjoy it. So that was just very humbling to me, that to know that here we are raising the American flag. We want everybody to feel safe and that we too care about them.
There are the arrows.
And then on the right-hand side, I'm teaching at the Joint Special Operations University, where in that room, there's about 30 different senior leaders from different countries to talk about what can we do globally together to thwart this threat. So I do consider myself a policy wonk. With policy, you have guidelines to establish what is right. As a warrior, I'm willing to fight for it. As a academic, I feel that with my knowledge and the education that I have, I want to go out and help people understand the threat. So, you know, a lot of times you hear terms like terrorism or extremism or insurrection, and I don't expect people to understand the nuances between each one, but there are, you know, different things that you should understand in each of those terms, because when it comes to policy or legislation or what we're going to do to thwart those things, you, based on what we're fighting, and especially here in America, for so many years, we weren't willing to accept that we had domestic terrorists in our own backyards. But we do, and we have extremists and we have hate groups. And so regrettably, in the last couple of years, we see an uptick in that activity. And I believe that part of that was due to this last administration, where we had people talking off, you know, just without any knowledge, and inspiring hate in activity. And the January 6th riots was a perfect example of how quickly something can surface. So again, there's certain terms, and depending on what you're talking about, there are fair expectations of what we can do. So can you take it to the
Tina,
next?
tell me when you like me to advance the screen.
Okay, next slide.
Sorry.
Okay, so currently there's been over 52 attacks in the United States with regard to lone offenders, and that's just simply one person based on their own mindset going out there with a lot of weaponry and with the intent to kill people. That's a lone offender, and that's just 52 of them since 1972. And then we have a huge uptick in internet activity and dark networks. So you all may recall that, you know, there was a threat to a Michigan governor, and she was being, you know, being sent death threats because of what she did and what she believed in. And so, you know, there are ties to certain hate groups that will literally threaten someone in a government capacity. And the dark web, by the way, is 400 times, I would say it's used 400 times more than the World Wide Web. So imagine that. Most of us are familiar with the World Wide Web. We use it for everything from buying, you know, products or just surfing the web or on Facebook or whatever. But the dark web is used so by criminals and or terrorists or people who want their conversations or their solicitation of things to be encrypted. So that's our challenge right now. It's being able to try to monitor that type of activity. And then of course we know about social media, you know, radicalization of people, especially our youth are vulnerable. And then there's also false narratives. You know, we don't really understand that, you know, depending on what radio station or TV station that you're listening to, sometimes the information is not factual. So we really have to pay better attention to that. And then we all know about the influence of Russia, you know, as they are today, you know, tainting our messaging, interfering with our elections, and now potentially our pipeline, right?
Yeah.
So we have to understand that we cannot take these type of threats lightly because they're ever existed. So here we are. This is where I take great pride in understanding what's going on in Florida. I believe that we have 62 or more hate groups very active in the state of Florida. The Southern Poverty Law Centers, where I garner a lot of my information from, Within Florida, we know that there's several groups such as the Proud Boys. And just today, I went on just to make sure that I was getting more relevant information for you all. There's a couple groups in West Palm Beach. They're called the Great Millstone and the Stormfront. These groups are nationalist. They are white supremacists, and they're active right here in our own particular county. And they may be up there just waving a flag off a bridge, or they might be riding around in some motorcycles or trucks. And that's not to say it's bad to have a truck or a motorcycle, but it's their behavior. So they may not want to openly express that they're a threat to our democracy, but they're very clever in sitting down in a restaurant or a bar or a park and talking about what they want to achieve. And then before you know it, they're trying to recruit people. So again, that particular website that I gave you there on the slide, you can find out more information if you want. Florida ranks second among all the United States in the number of hate groups last year. That is something that most people wouldn't even expect, but they are. Okay, next slide. So what are we going to do about it? That's where the rubber meets the road. It's great to have all this knowledge and this information, but what are we really going to do about it? Well, every one of us have the capability to do something versus nothing. So as the information, you might have to hit the next slide. I'm not sure if they come up by bullets or not, but this particular phone number that's on that screen right now, I encourage every one of you to stop what you're doing and just put it in your phone. I know it seems ludicrous, like, okay, why do I need this number? Well, because anytime you're out and about, you know, and you see something from your window or your car, or you're out there at a market or whatever, this particular phone number is where you can call anonymously. And you can say that, you know, the 5 W's, who, what, where, when, and why. They won't even take the time necessarily to ask who you are. They're going to take what you're telling them as honest truth. And they're going to dispatch a law enforcement entity, or maybe if there's a camera, surveillance camera nearby, they're going to try to turn it towards this activity. But you never know where you might be, and just call this number and you can report the activity that you deem as suspicious. You know, if you're a law enforcement intelligence, you're mandated to do this by law, regardless if you're on duty or not. So, and then of course, if your own life or another life is at risk, always dial 911. But be aware of your surroundings, you know, potentially don't be in the wrong place at the wrong time among a huge mass of people that may turn violent, whether it's daytime or nighttime. Just be aware of your surroundings. Limit how much personal information you share. You know, if you're on Facebook or Twitter, whatever, you know, you don't want to necessarily say that you're going to a particular demonstration or protest, because you might have people of a different thought showing up and causing havoc, like dialing into our Zoom sessions, right? You really never know what's going to happen, but just be, you know, cognizant of what you put out there for social media. The See Something, Say Something, it's a national campaign. Again, if you want more information on that, you might see billboards, you might see marquees over the interstate, but it's a very fluid program. If you report information, there's multiple entities that will react to it. And then of course, if you have a neighborhood watch community, be a part of it. You know your neighbors and be cognizant of what their capabilities are. You know, some people may be close to a location that's more vulnerable than others. You know, if you live in a location that has, you know, some skeptical activity, you know, they might be selling drugs, there might be prostitution, you know, and I'm not saying to avoid living in those areas necessarily, but if you are living or residing in an area or visiting an area that has that potential type of activity, just know that you need to have your guard up. And you know, if you can, I encourage people to use any type of video recording device that you might have, whether it's using, you know, Ring for your personal premises, or if you have like a cell phone when you're driving, or you have a body camera, whatever it is. Anytime you feel threatened, make sure it's on. You know, just we see it time and time again that, you know, people are being you know, killed That's the worst case scenario. And they don't take the time to alert their family members. Like I know on my cell phone right now, I have it set up. If I feel like I'm in danger, I'm going to push a button and it's automatically going to start recording the activity, and it's going to automatically alert my family members. It doesn't cost me anything extra, but it's an iPhone, so I have that capability. But just whatever you can have, whether it's again a surveillance camera at your home or something on your body, make sure that you have some kind of immediate alert system set up to notify people. So, okay, so here's the complexity. Again, these slides are available for you. If you want them later on, just let me know because you can glean from them later. But there's a lot of work that goes into whether or not we want the military to respond. And I spent several years in the Pentagon or in Washington, D.C. So I understand the authorities, whether it's Title 10, Title 32, or Title 50. How is it we have to look at a situation that is potentially going to turn harmful? And, what kind of military resources do we have? Whether it be in Florida or whether they have to get called up by the national level to respond to a location. But it takes time. So we're very quick sometimes to point the finger to the military. It's like, why are they there? Or why do they have up armored vehicles? Or why do they have these type of weapons? Well, hopefully we don't have to do that too often, because military people like myself years ago, I'm trained to kill, or I'm trained to make sure that I use of force to lessen the threat that's there. So when we do see the military deployed, we have to hopefully do that at the last resource of pulling in their capabilities. Because we should, and we have to try so hard across our nation. We are really challenged by understanding the role of the local police and investigators and sheriffs and state attorney generals. And they have a role and a responsibility that we have to uphold to the highest degree, just like our first responders, our paramedics, our firefighters. But we do have a few bad apples out there. We have people, whether they're in local law enforcement or the FBI or the military, nobody's perfect, but we have to make sure we reiterate to the best degree possible that that's our first line of defense. When we call on the police or the military, that they're there to help us. They're not there to do undue harm. So we have to keep working through that. So part of that, with Governor DeSantis just recently passing the anti-riot bill, it's going to make it very difficult, because any law enforcement officer that's out there and they see 3 or more people gathering, if they feel that this is going to be a protest, they automatically have the right to detain those people, haul them down to the police station, and hold them overnight till they get a trial. And then the trial is probably going to convene to be said, okay, these people really didn't have any ill intent, so let them go. And that cost a lot of money and a lot of manpower. So it was really a ludicrous bill that he let pass, but now we have to deal with it. And oh, by the way, there's 34 states throughout our nation that are considering the same thing. And again, if you follow the legislation, more often than not, it's just strictly Republicans that are trying to pass those types of bills. And they don't realize that that's a disadvantage, because when the people care enough to protest something, whether it's equal rights or pay or LGBTQ or whatever, America is about a democracy, and we should be able to share our opinions through a protest. So we just have to be very careful about now the way we do that. And all the while, we have different extremist organizations and terrorist organizations out there, again, using the dark web. They're recruiting people. They won't be on a street corner. They're not going to be blowing smoke out of their big trucks. They're not going to be packing a lot of weapons. But all the while, they're on the web, and they're talking to people and recruiting them and paying them money, giving them guns and training to do us harm. And so organizations like Antifa and some of those hate groups I mentioned earlier, they're autonomous, and they will continue to operate. So we have to stay on top of that activity. And then of course we have cults, we have gangs, and sometimes, I've been to Guatemala, in Colombia, and in Iraq, and a lot of countries over the last few years. And what I try to remind people is that when we have people fleeing those countries to cross borders, whether they're trying to get into Europe or they're trying to get into the United States, most of those people are just trying to find a safe place to live. Okay, they may be young children trying to cross the border, so the parents can't necessarily cross, but we can't have the mindset that everybody trying to cross borders has ill intent. Sometimes they're being blackmailed, they're being threatened, or they're potentially going to commit suicide. So again, back to the complexity of what we're dealing with. Okay, next slide. Okay, so there's some tools and resources that we can, again, just try to put in the back of our minds to use. We have a National Suspicious Activity Reporting Initiative, like I mentioned before. If we see something, say something, call a phone number, call 911, report whatever you're seeing. And don't try to be the hero of the day and go out there and stop a protest or get out your gun and just say, okay, I'm going to deal with this on my own. You certainly can try, but you never really honestly know what you're up against sometimes. And so the best thing is just to make sure you're communicating with people that can have the authority and the right purpose to deal with the threat. And then continuing on, there's a global threat assessment that is published every year from DNI, and that's the Department of National Intelligence. And the last one was published on April 9th of 2021. It's public knowledge. Again, I gave you the link to go there. If you do read it, it is very, at a federal level, it talks about not just domestic terrorism, but why is it we need to care about Iran and China and Russia and all these national level stakeholders that we have to be cognizant of. Like, okay, so we have this gas pipeline right now from Texas up to the Northeast that was hacked. So why does that matter to us in Florida? Well, it matters because they could easily, shut down our grid, or maybe they would sabotage our ports. A lot of our gas comes from these tankers that pull up to our ports. So to think that it happened on this pipeline, well, it can happen in other places too. So anyway, if you really want to do some, I don't want to say light reading, but you can read that assessment in a matter of an hour to really help you resonate on what we're up against with regard to America, and why sometimes we have to work harder to maintain relationships with other countries. And I'll give you an example. I've been to Afghanistan, and we spent, oh my gosh, millions and millions of dollars to help the country of Afghanistan over the years. And people question that. Why did we do that? Why did we lose a lot of American lives to do that? Well, part of the reason was because we needed a foothold there. Because of course, the women or the way that they govern the Taliban in that country, it's not always palatable to us as Americans. So we want to kind of share our way of life with another country, but it's deeper than that. Is that we don't want a country like Russia or Pakistan to move into that country and take over, because they believe in a lot of things we don't. They may starve their people, they may have drug trafficking, they don't treat women with respect. So again, I know it's millions and millions of dollars that we give to another country to help them. And I'm not saying we should always do it for a long, long period of time. We should do it for a short period of time, see if it helps, and then back out. So that's what we're doing now. Okay, and lastly there, it talks about the Homegrown Violent Extremist Mobilization Indicators booklet. Again, if you're working in a capacity where you need to bolster organizations, whether they're governmental or nonprofit, this particular booklet gives you a lot of great information to glean from. It talks about, well, how is it that okay, if you have a couple of those groups that I mentioned earlier that are active in Palm Beach County, what do they look like? What kind of uniforms do they wear? What kind of tattoos do they have? Where do they live? That's the information that this particular booklet will help give you so you can better counter that threat. Okay, continue on. I'm almost done. I know I'm talking pretty fast, but I want to give you times for questions and anything I can help give you more information about. So this next slide, what talks about what's going on a day-to-day basis. So those particular events that I give you that talk about things that happened in April, I did reach out to the Southern Poverty Law Center and I asked them, can I get some up-to-date information on May? And it's not available yet because we're still in the middle of May. But the next slide, if you would. It talks about, okay, so what happened in April nationally, right? Well, in the states of New York and Virginia and California, you had bomb threats, you had assaults, and you had cyber stalking. So as we speak in April, because of this intelligence sharing and reporting of suspicious activity in these particular states, because of that reporting, these are the types of events that we're tracking and people are being tried for and going to prison for. Assault, where I have that little asterisk. There were people in Florida, several of them, that were part of that riot that occurred on Capitol Hill that are being tried right now. And some of them have already been given their punishment. Cyber stalking, it's a little different than cyber threats, but people out there monitoring communications, banks, hospitals, dams. We're watching people right now that are planning an attack on our critical infrastructure. And so we're very, very concerned about that. And we can do it too. That's part of it. It's like, well, are we going to wait until they actually do it before we retaliate? No, we're not. Sometimes we're going to preempt it, or we might do it on their foreign soil ahead of time. It all depends. In Pennsylvania, there was groups of people buying ricin and with the intent to do harm. People giving materials to ISIS. There's conspiracies against journalists. So again, I shared this information because you can see there's a lot of different types of activity going on in America, and it's all over, and it's of a different variety. So I didn't share those details, but you see that's, April 7th, April 8th, April 9th, within 1 week, we are taking down those type of terrorists or extremists every day for different reasons. So I just kind of wanted to share that so you know that sometimes this type of criminal breakdown, you don't necessarily always hear it in the news as far as what we're doing to these type of people. You might see in New York City or in Chicago or something as a threat is unfolding, or after it's taken place, the hundreds or the thousands of people that have been killed. But I would love to hear more about the good news. The good news is, what did we do? How did we take them down? How many people did we take down? And what is the consequences? Because the more we talk about that, the less likely, hopefully, that these type of gangs or extremist groups or terrorists will continue their activity. They're going to know that we're watching and that we're going to do something about it. Okay. And this is the last slide that I want to talk about. So strategically, I've really, again, I've been so blessed because some of the positions and the jobs that I've had working at a national or an international level, I've been given the opportunity to sit down with a lot of different organizations or a lot of different countries to say, what is it that we all want? Okay, we all want to have safe neighborhoods for our children to grow up into. We want a safe haven for our families to live in. And we want everybody to have the capability to feel comfortable and that their voice matters. So, you could be on a Native American reservation that feels disenchanted. You could be in the middle of China where you're being starved to death, or you could be in the middle of America where you're wondering, well, what the heck is going on? But we all value having a safe place to live, a roof over our head and food for our families. So there are commonalities across the world. How is it we communicate that? Like we would hope for our legislators, it's hard during the pandemic to sit around a table or sit into a room and find common ground. But there's capability, and we have to put our partisan politics by the wayside, because not every country has a government. Not every country has legislation. We're so grateful in America to have the three bodies of government. but nationally or internationally, we have to work harder together to say, this is what we all want. And we're going to come up with goals, and with goals, there's measurements. Okay, so we're putting all this money and resources behind an endeavor. Well, how is it every year we're measuring that? Are we being effective? And if it's not working, what do we need to pivot to make sure we get the effect that we do need? And then there's got to be short-term goals and long-term goals. So when I say I've been so humbled to have done this, it's hard. You're sitting in a room, or you're writing all this information out, a 40-page document, and it's got goals and objectives, and then you're going back every month to say, well, what's working, what's not working, and how are we going to change this to get the right effect? And then you got legislation that we're dealing with in America. Well, if you're not a part of the majority party, then good luck. We're not going to find that common ground. We'll deal with it 2 years from now or 4 years from now when we can get a new administration. And it's hard and it's not easy, but we have to keep working at it. So I often talk about, by the way, not tooting my horn, but many years ago, right here, in 2014, when I was running for Congress in South Dakota against a woman you've probably heard of, Governor Noem. That particular campaign, I left the Pentagon, and my salary was helping my 3 boys get through college. But at the time, she was then the sole congresswoman for South Dakota. And she voted twice not to reopen the government during the shutdown. And I said, she doesn't get it. She's a wealthy farmer. There's 880,000 people that live in the whole state, and she wants to make sure the government stays shut down. Because in her mind, it doesn't affect South Dakota because the farmers are doing okay. Well, I said, I can't have this. I went home, I did the best I could. In I think 14 months, I got 31 or 34% of the votes. And I didn't expect to win because it's a heavy Republican state and I ran as a Dem. But what people saw in me was, oh my gosh, Corinna is a combat veteran and she truly cares about what's at stake. It's not about the party. And so this dissertation that I was writing was about legislative decision making with regard to emergency management. And I talked about how ill-will some of those key officials, not just in South Dakota, but across the United States, were prepared to deal with emergency management. And so I don't rest on my laurels. I wrote it, and sometimes I refer to it. And then a couple years ago, I helped publish another book on violent extremism happening around the world. And it was a lot of us talking about, okay, what's going on? How can we help resolve this problem for the world? And then fast forward, here I am. I'm running against probably the most wealthiest state senator in Florida, Senator Gail Harrell. At the time last year, she chaired the Health Policy Committee. And I never feared, because I knew she had a lot of money. She was going to run a lot of commercials and everything and toot her horn. I could not rest comfortably because chairing the Health Policy Committee amid a pandemic, she didn't really get out and talk to many people. She didn't really fight hard to make sure we had the capabilities of FEMA or the National Guard to roll in to start testing people. She just left it up to the governor, and we all know that the governor kind of sit on a lot of capabilities. She didn't care whether or not people were wearing masks or whether schools were open, about small businesses suffering. She was just so silent. So again, no regrets. I don't regret running for either of those campaigns because I carried the torch for America, and I knew I had some knowledge base, and I had a lot of fire in my belly to make people understand what we're up against. So I still, again, I still consider myself a policy wonk. I look at a lot of analytic databases. I follow think tanks, the Counterterrorism Center, and here I am. I have a very, very small business. It specializes in national security and defense. So I get some contracts that I feel that I can help protect people through helping develop policy or legislation or education. And I don't think I'll stop that anytime soon. So I really feel grateful that you guys have afforded me the time to just bring you some tools of how to better protect our communities. And I don't know, I mean, God willing, I would love to campaign again here in Florida. And it's a tough nut to crack because it takes money, it takes time. I'm not afraid of that challenge, but there's choices to make. And I'm here for you guys, and any questions you might have, I'll do my best to answer them.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And before we have questions, the company you set up is On Mission LLC.
Yes,
Okay. Good.
it's on the
You know
next
what?
slide. If you'll show,
I should make your CV available. I'll send it to the participants after.
oh my gosh, well, it's an abbreviated CV. I just took an old CV and I deleted stuff that wasn't relevant to our conversation. But if you want to bring up the next slide, it has my contact information. That might be helpful for some people.
Oh, hang
Or
on.
unless you already did away with it.
I did away, but I can bring it back up. Here we go.
Okay.
Share,
Yeah, it's just at
and
the very last slide. Yep.
there we go.
There you go. Okay, great.
Good.
So what questions might some folks
And
have?
for questions, David, I'm sharing the screen. This says, see if there are any people with their hands up, or you can just unmute yourself and call out. We're Democrats here.
No fear.
Yeah, I don't see any hands raised.
Is Tom there? Is Tom's Jenny still on?
I'm stopping the share now, and let me see. Tom?
I want to talk.
Oh, go ahead. Hi, June.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much for one of the most important topics I can imagine, actually. It's just enormous. Before we were meeting with you, I did check with the SPLC as to see what was going on, and you addressed it, that they mentioned that from 2019 to 2020, the number, I guess, of countable domestic terrorism groups had dropped. But the explanation, I believe, was because they had migrated to the internet and the dark net, and you explained that and answered that. So my one question is this, and it may not be answerable. I'm not a lawyer. The laws that we currently have to deal with physical demonstrations, like what happened, January 6th, people marching down the street saying, I hate whatever, Eskimo, whatever. But what laws do we have to deal with the same thing online, especially when online the stuff is often coded or encrypted? I'm not saying list all the laws. I'm just saying, are we working on tools to do that? Because look what just happened with the pipeline. And that's it. That's my question.
Oh, well, it's definitely pertinent. Again, for a long time, we were so afraid of, I don't want to say spying on communications of our American citizens, but there was, with the ACLU, there was always these prohibitions and guards up about, we can't spy on our own people. So I think, certainly after the 9/11 attack, where we had the USA Patriot Act, and then now it's the USA Freedom Act, there are parameters where law enforcement or intelligence organizations, when they are tipped off or they're surveying certain activity online, based on the preponderance of that information, how often is it happening? Who are they communicating with? And, the technology of gathering that information is so incredibly precise. It's a lot of data coming together. So when those Snow, he kind of brought that to light with the NSA, is when we have that technology that's going to pinpoint that we have a threat out there, then there's probable cause for an organization then to dig deeper. And I'm so grateful. I mean, again, I talked about whole society. When I worked on Capitol Hill for a gentleman on the Intelligence Committee, we were sitting down then with Facebook and Apple, these corporations, to say, we know, you have these capabilities and people are communicating. So when and if are you going to shut down certain people's Facebook pages or Twitter sites or whatever, because they're fueling extremist activity? So we're seeing that happen now. But it's a long time coming. And you hit it right on the nail. With encrypted communications, it's much harder because it's harder to track. But we do have the capability to do it. It's just harder to do it.
And sometimes it's in plain sight. I remember writing an article last year about in Michigan when the thugs started patrolling in the gallery. They broke into the state legislature and they had their automatic weapons and they were parading back and forth. And the people, the legislators, were down on the floor. There were articles in the Detroit Free Press talking about some of those people and talking about their postings where they were threatening or planning outright to kidnap Governor Whitmer. That was about 4 or 5 months before they actually arrested the people. I mean, and this was something that I came across just by reading a newspaper, and of course that was Trump's Justice Department. One hopes that, Biden's Justice Department and FBI is going to be more active in monitoring these threats and responding to them.
Yeah, and watching, a couple weeks ago when we were watching that bill, the anti-relic bill, go through the House and then the Senate, I mean, it was really discerning because I believe the bill had some merit, and that when and if a law enforcement entity feels that, there's potentially going to be a riot, then they should use their own experience and knowledge to deal with that threat. But, to the point, because, they'll be biased, that if they see 3 people of a minority or a certain, belonging, whether it's, Muslim or LGBTQ or whatever, that, just to walk up to 3 people and haul them off to jail, it's not necessary, and that costs money. We already know our jails and our prisons are overpopulated. So I just was appalled. I really thought, especially with our governor being former military like myself, that really, and he's never been law enforcement, but there was so many people that really tried to get that bill amended, and it should have been, but it wasn't. So now we just got to deal with it until, hopefully we get some more elections underway and replace some folks.
Yeah. David, did you have a?
Yeah, I was sitting here kind of stunned during a fair amount of your presentation. A lot of the people you were saying to that we should turn to for help are people I've always considered my enemy. I mean, growing up on the left wing and, fighting against the Vietnam War, fighting for civil rights, fighting for everything that's decent. The cops were never on our side. Certainly the organs of government, the FBI, the CIA, up until this point, we were always the big threat. The left was never a threat. It was always the right wing. And the army is infiltrated, top to bottom with insane right wing, members. And I just somehow the idea of turning to them and turning to the police, to this day, the police are not going to be on my side. They're always going to be, I mean, some individuals will. There were certainly marches on Washington where the DC cops were absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
That may have been 50 years ago. So it was kind of interesting. I think for the first time, they are starting to look at the right wing as the real threat.
Yeah.
And there is some hope in that. But every time they crack down on them, they're going to crack down on me. Except all I do now is occasionally write letters to the Delray Democrat.
No, you're so you're so right, Dave. Yeah, and I would say in the military for 20 years, and then some of the countries I served in, I get it. I mean, there were several special forces guys, especially when I said I was going to run for a political office, is like, are you crazy? And I said, well, you know what we're seeing now is there's more diversity, right? Whether it be different ethnic backgrounds or women or whatever, America is starting to understand to really project more equality and peace and a safer environment. It's not going to be our traditional patriots, that are going to save us all. It's we have to take care of one another. But a lot of the right wing or very powerful people don't want equity. They just want to control everything. So I get it. I even like 3 years ago when I was working with special forces, and some of my peers, they had bunkers of ammunition and tons of guns, and every time we came back from a trip somewhere, they just want to go out shooting, right? I said, that's great. And they don't want their guns tracked. They don't want to register all their weapons. And I thought, well, that's great, because you know how to use them and you're probably going to exercise use of force. But what about all those other people that are buying them on the dark web and don't have that level of training? We have to start somewhere. So I hear you, and I appreciate what you say.
Charlie Holbrook has a hand up.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to take one more question, then I got to
Right.
get to the other Zoom.
Charlie, you got to unmute.
Well, the funny thing is now we're starting to get people coming in for the 7 o'clock meeting. So
Okay.
People who don't read. Charlie, you have to unmute yourself.
Can
There
you
you
hear
go.
me?
we
Yeah.
forgot.
Hi, Charlie.
I wanted to say to David, I have I have certainly some of the same fears, but there's people like that will surprise you. Like, I don't know whether you've heard of Admiral McRaven, former
Yes.
head of Special Forces.
Yes.
He's taken a firm stand against the far right. And he's gotten blowback, a lot of blowback. But I mean, there's a lot of good guys out there. My concern is, I wanted to ask the speaker about Alexandra Mayorkas recently announced that the Secretary of Homeland Security, that there's a big problem in Homeland Security with the far right infiltration of the people on the borders. And, my heart goes out to those poor people trying to come across here to get to freedom and to get to avoid violence. We need those people. And here we've got these apparently a rather large ring of far right, whatever you want to characterize them, terrorizing women and children. And they're not all drug dealers. I mean, there's a small cadre of drug dealers, but you listen to the far right media, it's like everybody's a mule packing cocaine and fentanyl, and they're just trying to come over here for freedom. And we've got these people who have infiltrated to some of the levels in our government that are scary. So that's
yes. And so Admiral McRaven, absolutely, he's doing the right thing. And then on the opposite side, we have retired General Flynn, Michael Flynn, who's doing the opposite. But I will say we are so grateful. Retired General Austin, who's now Secretary of Defense Austin, is one of my mentors. And, he quickly was willing to take charge when we knew, as I knew, when in the military, we do have extremists. And again, it was changing that mindset that we need to, as a commander on the ground, is I need to assess if I have any of those people in my ranks. And again, sometimes I suspected we did, or even as a government civilian, I suspected it. When I found out, then I dealt with it. But we didn't until this past year. Secretary also said he took a lot of heat for it to say, we're going to start looking through our ranks. We're going to do questionings. We're going to go to people's Facebook pages. We're going to go to their Twitter pages, and we're going to see what's going on. And several of those members were forced to get out of the military. And DHS, as you just mentioned, they need to do the same thing. But it's going to be more difficult because in DHS, it's a governmental entity with a lot of contractors. So it's harder to remove a government civilian from what they're doing than it is to remove somebody from the military. It's going to take more time, and DHS is a huge organization. But if we use the same approach with DHS as we did with DOD, then you know, and that's where it goes all back to us. If we see suspicious activity, we need to report it. And you know, if you don't think the local police or the sheriff or the somebody's doing something about it, then call the FBI, or you know, just help them connect the dots and not turn a blind eye.
Trump was using one last thing. Trump was using the DHS agents as a paramilitary force for his personal use. I noticed that toward the end.
And
That's
some of
all
the Secret Service too.
Corinna,
know that.
hi, Corinna.
Hey, hi, Arlene.
Most of there was so many of the January 6th mob that were ex-military and police. It is and when we were talking about the media sites, when they're private, they have they're an exemption from, or somehow they're not affected by Amendment 1, like with Trump, when Twitter closed down Trump and he's still fighting that. You know, it's like, I feel like I'm in a tsunami that gets bigger and bigger every time DeSantis opens his mouth. And I'm just, you know, fighting it to get through. I won't stop, but we're into such a terrible time.
A delicate situation. We definitely are. Yes. Well, I know you're just coming on, Arlene, and I'm so sorry.
I've been here. I've been here.
Have you? Okay, I'm sorry. Because when I first logged on, I looked at all the participants. So I'm sorry I missed you there, but love you to death. And I do, gosh, I mean, I'm right here in Boca. That's where my business operates. So I'm just down the road. But you have my contact information. And I look forward to when we can meet in person, because I would just love to be out there with you guys.
Okay, you have to jump now, right?
Yep, I'm gonna jump to North County.
Okay, all right, well, say hi to them and thanks so much for talking to us.
Okay, thank you guys so much and stay safe.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, everyone. I don't know if anyone wants to continue this. Any comments? Or I will thank everyone for attending and hope that
Let's stick around.
what's that? Set stick around, yeah, and Z, right. So no, our next meeting, as always, second Thursday in June.
Arlene saying something. Arlene?
Michael, I wanted to say something about Corinna, because she is serious. She was trying to see about running against this Gail Harrell, and she knows it's not going to be for the money. It's going to be for the principles and what she can do. So I don't know if there's anything we can. It's not our districts, but she's a fighter, and I just hope that somehow we can support her in some way. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
So
impressive. She was impressive.
Yeah, and she worked hard on the census. For a short time, she was at the League of Women Voters, chair of
Speakers Bureau.
Speakers Bureau, and on March 7th, right before the pandemic closed us all down, she gave a wonderful program on the census for
for us. For us, you came in late. I said she was the last. She was our last speaker in real live speaker before we had to go to Zoom, and I'm hoping now that she'll be our last Zoom speaker before we go back to live. But
and she was at the Delray Public Library doing the census for the Haitian American Culture Collaborative.
So
okay.
Well, thank you all for attending. And David will post this on our
if you just
website.
Now, I'll leave it open for a while so we get some of the 7 o'clock people, and I'll tell them that we'll put it up live.
Right. Well, you know, we're sometimes reading challenged, so.
We're also, you know, it's habit. I almost forgot, and I had to start it.
Yeah,
All of a sudden,
I
I look
wouldn't-
at
I
the
wouldn't have let
26th, I'm
you
like,
forget.
wait a minute.
David.
so,
But you were there, David. You were there.
I made it. I made it.
You did it. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
good night, everyone, and thank you again. Hey, Audrey, you got on, I see. Yeah. Jeff, good to see you.
They're all-
Thanks
We have
for
to have you back.
See you next month.
Okay.